dear brothers and sisters, ISB and ISBCC community members. Welcome to Community Voice. I know, like right now, most likely are stick on your couch, like watching one of the news channel, following up what's going on, like social media or TV or wherever you are. So I'd like to be considerate of your time. Our 30 minutes today is going to be definitely on the election 2020 and how can we move on as a community regardless of the results. So my guest speaker today is Sister Ndidi Amatullah Okakpu. And let me introduce Sister Ndidi. She's a community advocate working in community development and nonprofit management. She also a grassroots and AIF-trained faith-based community organizer who has mobilized Black Muslims and Black and Brown communities in the fight for social justice, safe neighborhoods, and housing and combating socioeconomic disparities. She utilizes her Quranic studies at Jamiat Abu Nur in Damascus, Syria, and her studies in the application of Quran to daily life. And this will be like part of the thing that we'll be asking her today, taught by Imam Waliduddin Muhammad to inform her social justice activism. She has since joined several delegations to the White House Office of Public Engagement under the Obama administration, addressing and advising on issues affecting these communities. She also served on mayoral presidential campaigns and is a current leader with Black American Muslim Vote, and Illinois affiliate with the American Coalition for Good Government, and supports the senior development team at the Inner City Muslim Action Network. She's joining us live from the Midwest. Thank you very much for joining us, Sister Ndidi. How's the things looks like the Midwest right now?
Alhamdulillah, it is, we're all just working hard and waiting with bated breath. There have been some wins in local government. There have been some losses in local government. And I think all eyes are on DC and who's going to be occupying that residence in Pennsylvania on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Perfect. So you're like social activists. So what is social activist? And describe for me, like, what's your daily work? What's your normal daily work looks like from morning to the end? What is social activist? And if I find like a social activist, so there is like social inactive person. So describe for me that.
I like that. Okay, so I mean, I think that they're all language. There are different languages or terms used to describe different forms of work around justice and equity, right? So there are people who consider themselves community advocates. That could be someone who is like a legislature. That could be someone who is who's working as an attorney on behalf of community matters. But in terms of a social activist or a community activist, that is somebody who could be a community organizer, for example. A community organizer is a person who is trained in working with community members to, I don't want to say empower, right? Because we don't use the term empowering, like people have their own power. So it's not for me to give you power, but a community organizer is someone who can help provide information, resources, and encouragement so that people in communities that are affected by injustice can strengthen and gain and build their own power to affect change in their own communities and environments. So it's not a concept where, where people come in and they become supermen, superwomen, and coming to save the day. I'm gonna, miskeen, like this sad, poor community, I'm gonna come and save you. It's connecting with people in the community and finding out what are their concerns, their fears, their hopes, and connecting them with resources, whether it's skills or training, so that they can empower themselves to lead their own communities and to attain those hopes that they have for themselves. And so that's community organizing. It's building power through people, investing in people to build community power.
Perfect. Sounds like a great introduction, great exciting job. So right now, people are calling this the election of our lives. Lots of stuff are happening in this election. How are you feeling as a community advocate, an advisor, or a social activist at this particular moment?
I mean, I think we're all kind of like, mashallah, we're all just, I think everyone's a little tired, a little, but we're hopeful. We just know that the work doesn't stop after November 3rd. It doesn't stop after January 2021, irrespective of who is in office. We're all, I mean, there's been so many things. 2020 has been a whirlwind, not just for the community advocate. Like, it's been a whirlwind for everyone, between trying to fight for our safety from disease or from brutality. And just trying to navigate modern life as we know it, and then trying to fight for this election of our lives, which impacts the first two things I mentioned. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but it's a responsibility. It's an amana, as Khalifa. It's our responsibility to use the examples of the prophetic tradition and the teachings of the Quran to do good works and speak out against injustice and continue to fight the good fight.
And those like injustice and the stuff that you are doing in your job, is it something that's we have to focus on our own community, or like this injustice for anyone who's suffering from injustice?
That's a great question. I like that you posed that, because I think a lot of times we just focus on our immediate circles and spaces, not realizing that we're interconnected. I would say, what do you think about Dr. Martin Luther King? You like him? Well, one of the things that he said is a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Right. So, and we know in that within Islam, we are taught, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you truly believe until you love for your brother that which you love for yourself. There are rights on the neighbors that are proliferated throughout Quran, throughout the Hadith and the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's not enough to only just be concerned with ourselves. We have to be looking at our 40 neighbors to the right, to the left, in front, and behind. And we also have to realize not just and why? Because Allah says so, because that's what we're supposed to do. But if that's not a good enough motivator, understand that if you live in a neighborhood and then houses start catching fire, eventually your house will catch fire. So it's in your best interest to help make sure there's a fire department nearby. And so I say all this to say it's not enough to just brush off social issues. If you feel like, well, I'm Black and that's Palestinian and that doesn't pertain to me, or you say, well, I'm Pakistani and that's a Black issue and that doesn't pertain to me, because the reality is sooner or later it will affect you, and whatever it is that is suppressing and oppressing this group will eventually migrate over to you. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. So from your observation or your work, how do you think the Muslim American community is coping right now?
I mean, I think that we are, it varies. It varies. It varies. But I think more than anything, we are doubling down on our efforts of civic engagement. I think that we learned a lot. I think the world, especially America, and particularly the Muslim American community, learned a lot from 2016. And I think that everyone has worked doubly hard on not being passive members of community, not being hard this election cycle. And so, I mean, I think that we are, people are frustrated. People are, hopeful. As Muslims, we don't despair in the mercy of God. And so we know that however things turn out, it's going to be the qadar, the will and power of Allah. And we're going to figure it out, however it goes. But I think that I'm very heartened by the efforts. There have been Muslims who've been very active when it comes to the issues, the social justice issues around the killing of innocent Black people in America. We've been organizing in various communities and together as an ummah in regards to that. We have been, there are multiple Muslim health centers across the country, including Ummah Clinic, Inner City Muslim Action Network Health Center. There's a center out in Tenderloin. So they've been, a lot of the health centers have been on the ground trying to help citizens survive COVID, trying to provide them with medical resources, COVID testing. The Ma'un Center, Al Ma'un Center in Minneapolis was impacted after the killing of George Floyd. In fact, George Floyd had actually been in that community of Al Ma'un Center, and so they've been providing on the ground resources to people suffering from the COVID pandemic and from the from destabilization from the uprisings. So the Muslim community, we've really gone in this year. We really stepped up our efforts to look out for our neighbors and our individual communities and the collective ummah and for the American landscape.
And this was like, did you find challenge in putting them and motivate our community to step up and do their civic work? And the second thing is, have you witnessed any age differences, like the young youth participation in this election versus like the elderly or the professionals? So have you found that? What's your observation on that?
So the first question, remind me the first question again. You said the first question was?
So my question was like regarding the involvement in the election cycle. Did you find like, was it easy to get them involved in getting out and vote? And my second part is like age segmentation. What's your observation on the age participation?
So I think that between the detention centers on the border, between the Muslim ban, between the everything that's been going on, I think that Muslims have been should have been motivated more than anyone to be active. I don't think, it's so interesting seeing this cycle versus 2016 versus when Bush was elected, and how Muslims were so separate. There were Muslims who didn't see, they voted based on their political affiliations and business dealings and things like that. And then we had to suffer under the Bush administration. And I think, successively since then, we've seen more and more reasons why it's critical for us to look beyond just ourselves and our immediate communities. And now we have laws that are trying to regulate women's health. We have laws that are like literally a list that just banned us from going to Muslim majority countries. And then, so and attacks on the immigration policies that we have. So, I think that this election cycle, you saw organizations like My Muslim Vote. You saw organizations like Million Muslim Votes and Black American Muslim Votes that I support or work with, and American Coalition for Good Government really work hard to mobilize. At the end of the day, these, you can do the organizing and policy go hand in hand. We can mobilize the people on the ground. That part is important. You have to get your communities showing. The blocks are very, very important. That's what motivates politicians to listen to you. Is that you can show that you've mobilized this group. And I think that there's been a lot of efforts to mobilize our groups, our respective groups, and then collectively. And I think that the Muslim community in general has been much more engaged. And I think 2016, just really the aftermath of that, showed us that we can't play around with this anymore. Of young people, I think definitely there were young people. I think that young people showed out more in the 2016 election. I feel like the 2016 election garnered more excitement. You had candidates like Bernie Sanders, who I ran for second congressional district delegate for, in that in the 2016 election cycle. You had people like Hillary Clinton, which would have been potentially have been the first woman president. So I think that 2016 garnered a lot more excitement. And so you got youth by record numbers that you usually didn't get. Traditionally, we know that the majority of the voters are middle-aged to seniors for the American population that are the strongest voter blocks. And I think in 2016, you got the highest number. But I think with the current pandemic of brutality against innocent Black people, between things like the Women's March and laws and policies that are that negatively impacts women's health, between policies that are just between like I said, I'll talk about the Muslim ban till the cows come home, but that are negatively impacting immigration. I think we still saw youth, but I don't think it was with the same veracity as 2016. And I also think that it's just a more somber year too. It's we're literally fighting like two different types of pandemics. But one thing we did see a huge turnout has been in terms of early voting. There's been a lot of early voting. And so we're very optimistic as the numbers continue to come in about how early voting can impact this election.
Yeah, the results. Thank you for that. So I will come back to the difference and what are our learnings from 2016 versus 2020. But right now, tell me, let's move forward. Let's move beyond today and tomorrow. So whether like President Trump being re-elected and be the winner, or Joe Biden will be the winner. Tell me what is our community need to do post this step and this phase?
Okay, so the thing is, if Trump wins versus if Biden wins, I think that we have to, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ وَإِلَى رَبِّكَ فَارْغَب, right? And so after you are free of your immediate duties, continue to labor onward, and to your Lord is the immediate goal, right? So irrespective of how this election turns out, we have to continue to do the work. And we have to understand that, this year we have been tested in a way that hasn't been seen for decades. But we have to also understand that whether you're of African descent or Palestine, like if you're from a Palestinian descent or Mexicana or anything, our ancestors, there have been people who've seen even worse than what we're experiencing now, right? And so, and our predecessors, they have survived it, and they overcame it, And so whatever comes, we, inshallah, by God's mercy, we will not despair of God's mercy, and by God's mercy, we will move forward. If Trump wins, we're going to have to double down our efforts, triple down or quadruple down our efforts. I think one thing that that the pundits are saying, and we're saying that one of the things is that that we've learned, or that people learn, is that it's not enough to say anybody but this particular candidate, anybody but Trump, or anybody but Biden. That's not enough. Like, there has to be real outreach and community building. You have to identify the needs of the people, and you have to have an agenda for the people. You have to recommend an agenda, and you have to show with your work and your actions, and not with your words. And so it's not what happens during the election year, it's what happens the 4 years prior to the election year. And so if Trump wins, then we have to use these next 4 years to continue to build community, to invest in institutions that are going to work with us. And if Biden wins, it's the same. We don't rest on our laurels. We have to continue. We can't. The greatest tragedy that could happen, or travesty that could happen, is that anyone become complacent.
I agree with you. Yeah, this is very good. And actually, from the observation this year, that I found too many people getting involved, the talks, and I'm not saying that. I was having a discussion with a friend prior to this episode. Say that get yourself informed. Don't build your decision based on emotions. Do your due diligence, research, understand. Getting involved is something that's very positive. And as you mentioned, like politicians count with the numbers. So we have to mobilize, be on a number, be a unity. You mentioned something else. You mentioned something that's, yes, you have seen some policies being put against Muslims, but surprisingly, again, that this is the freedom, this is the beauty of this country. Some of the Muslims, they say that, hey, we like that, as long as it's not touching us from a justice point of view, but we like that, and we will embrace this idea, and whoever represents this idea. So this is something that we need to reflect on and understand why, so that in our advocacy and mobilization, we have to start tackling and understanding and putting some policy strategies. So how can we talk with such, I would say, that's different opinions. So how do we get Muslim community to see that we need to work together? And the reason I'm saying that, because and I think that's for someone like you who travels and goes all over to work with the Muslim community, it is a challenge. It's a challenge that we don't work together. We look for leadership. We look for some visibility. So how can we communicate together, get the Muslim community to work together?
How do we get the Muslim community? So I think that if this election is not a good enough motivator, I really just don't know what really is. I mean, the biggest falsehood that Shaitan has been spreading is that we can do this on our own, or that we can all be self-sufficient, and that what I'm doing here doesn't affect you, and what you do here doesn't affect me. And, until we need each other. I think, what is it? There's a hadith that says the Muslim ummah and its love and mutual respect for one another is like one body. And so when one limb is affected, is injured, then the whole body is plagued with fever and sleeplessness and restlessness. So we are all collectively connected. This does not remove our own individual identities. The needs of the Black Muslim community may differ, from that of the South Asian community, and may differ from that of the Arab community and the white American and the Latina community. There are things that we're all going to have in common because we're Muslims and we're living in America, right? And we're humans and we're mu'mins. So there are things that connect us. There are things that are specific and unique. So it is our responsibility that whenever we are speaking on behalf of Muslims, that we are making sure that there is adequate representation. Because at the end of the day, when a plague comes to a particular group, you don't want people to not prioritize it because they feel that you have not been engaged during their time of need. And in fact, there was I can't remember what was going on. There was something going on in one of the Arab communities in Chicago, and I mentioned it to an African American imam, and he was saying, we'll help them. But I remember that when we were going through the civil rights, some of the civil rights, some of the issues during the civil rights movement, that particular masjid did not support us. They didn't help us. And so it's now they want our help. So we don't want to be in that situation. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm asking, before, in the next 3 minutes, do you have any final thoughts you would like to share with the community? And please make those final thoughts of in terms of action items. What shall we do from today moving forward?
Okay, action items in 3 minutes. Let's see. Moving forward. First, I think everyone needs to just woosah, right? So I encourage deep breathing and meditation, and just understanding that however this turns out, it's going to be by the qadr of Allah, and to not become frustrated or fall into despair anyway, however the election turns out. 2 is to not become complacent, right? When, however this turns out, we need to be working harder. So I'm encouraging all community members to get involved in your local government and find out who are the officials. Every Muslim, every citizen should know who are the aldermen and the immediate elected officials in their area, the council people, the councilmen, the councilwomen, and where do they stand? Politics is local, so we're talking about the presidential, but there are so many other smaller elections that counted this cycle. So be sure that you know everything about your local community. Find out who the activists are in your area, and find out how you can get engaged, how you can support. Whether it's donating, or whether it's spreading the word, getting online. For now, as COVID safe as we can. We don't have the town halls like we used to physically, but we do a lot of things virtually.
Perfect. Thank you much, Sister Ndidi Amatullah. I really enjoyed that, and good luck in your trip in the Midwest. And please keep the channels open with the ISB. We need you. We need to know more about your services and how can we organize ourselves post 2020 elections. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, and hope that's sleepy night tonight. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.